Who's your partner? Come on, what'd you come up with? What is the pupil learning process? Talk to the outside voice.
The learning objective, I find it is a benchmark for people to measure the learning outcomes. And it's also a guide for the person who delivers it, so that they don't detour and talk about the daily life, family.
Okay.
Which happens quite often, I think. Then they'll give the participant or the students what is expected.
Okay.
The expectation of the institute, what they're supposed to learn after
Okay.
the process.
Okay. All right. Over here.
So these are my neighbors. We are living in a condominium.
All right.
All right. Okay. Based on our discussion, it's actually more towards alignment, guided towards the aim.
Okay.
Yeah. So we towards this active learning. That means they have like self-assessment at the end of the day.
Okay. So the objective points you in the direction of
What
what you
want
want.
to gain?
Okay. At the end. Back here.
Agree with all your opinions. You're not necessarily living in a condo here, right? Fine. Objectives we discussed is now having sense of direction, and also I may add, you see a little bit light at the end of the tunnel, like where you want to go, having that goals and something that you want to achieve in the end.
Okay. Thank you very much. So, if I were to learning objectives are what I call the roadmap for learning. They tell the learner what we want them to know. And so for your students, it's clear and ambiguous what you want them to know. I always tell my students, say, what's going to be on the exam? I'll say, go read the learning objectives. Because that tells you precisely what I'm going to have on my exam. And they tell us what we should focus on in our instructional process. Which means that if we have a given set of objectives, that this is not a time for us to tell our life story and why we're as good as we are. Unless that was one of your objectives. And you can add your other. Okay. Summative assessment tells us what the learner has learned. Summative assessment tells us that the learner has learned what we want them to learn. I know it feels like to be. They are typically high stakes. They are the final exam. They are the things that tell you what grade you're going to be giving that person when you finish the course. From your faculty point of view, your summative assessment is the thing that tells you whether you're going to get promoted or not. From a high stakes point of view. Okay? Now, what I want to do is, in the States, we have lots of discussion about whether exams are good and whether by teaching to the test, we've done something wrong. What I want to say to you is that as long as the test measures what we want, and this gives us the objectives that we're looking for, there's nothing wrong with the test. As long as our students don't know precisely what's going to be on the test. All right? But I'm going to give you a test. But first, you must read the assignment. Have you all read this item? Okay. You read the assignment?
Oh, yeah.
Now let's see how you did. What is dryoxylate? It's a new form of? Okay, hey, you got good. How's it Monto? Okay? Where is it, I should say. I'm sorry, I can't read. Is Montil then? Okay, so it's down. How is it possible? Oh, come on.
And then back
Okay. You can what? Crystallate large amounts of vermont and then factor it to do what? Deposit. What are you doing? Okay? Why is it important? Because it could be one of the most useful products within the molecular family of now, y'all did a work. What do you know? Okay? What do you know? So the issue comes, how do we, if you test learners on fact-based stuff, they give you back fact-based stuff. So, what kind of objectives and goals and so forth do you use in order to get people to learn? One person, now that a little on. One person's, so listen to that. There's a guy by the name of Benjamin Bloom, who came up with Bloom's taxonomy, which says, if I take a look at knowledge, there are lower order thinking skills and there are higher order thinking skills. And that in order to have effective instruction, I need both lower order thinking skills, which introduce people to the material, and higher order thinking skills, which test that they have formed a concept and can think deeply about the subject. Where deeply depends upon what level of course you're talking about. Thinking deeply for an introductory course is not the same thing as thinking deeply for an upper level course. So, but you want them to think deeply. And he starts out by saying we have knowledge, comprehensive, application. Those are what we call lower order skills, passive. They can get them. Those are the kinds of things that most students can get if they simply read the textbook and they're there. Higher order thinking skills are those things, we call them HOCs, locks and HOCs. Locks for lower order cognitive skills, HOCs for higher order cognitive skills. But you earn your money when you can get your students to move to the higher order thinking skills, because that's what they need your help to do. Okay? My practice was to give quizzes on lower order skills and not do much of that in class, but to concentrate on higher order skills. The take-home exam is that in order to have, in order to have effective instruction, we should align your goals and objectives with your assessment. Students get really irritated if you ask nothing but lock type stuff in class. Lock type stuff, lower order skills on quizzes. And then they get the final exam and you've got nothing but higher order stuff. Because they have never learned how to do what? How to parse it, how to handle that. So our job is to get you to start thinking about lower order and higher order skills. Our job is to write objectives that do both. Lower order skills that tell them where to start, higher order skills that get them to where you want them to go. And I think that was my final slide. It is. Allison.
Jim's talked to you about summative assessment. What I'm going to talk to you about now is the formative part. It's the act of learning. It's what you do in class to enable you to understand that your students have got the point, that they've understood the issues. So it's about working out what particular teaching style you can use, what questioning approach you might adopt to enable you to say, and look at the students, and as Jim said, look them in the eye, and even though your student is hard-nosed and knows that if you look the person in the eye, the person's going to think that they know the answer, most students will look down. But it's for you to come up with a way of interacting with your students, to engage them, but also to enable you to work out that the student understands. So in this particular session, what we're aiming at, the objectives are to look at the link between active learning and trying to find out whether the student really knows or whether they have some misunderstanding or some misconception of the issue. Move away from it being entirely teacher-centered to where it's learner-centered, and then trying to work out how to do that in the classroom. So active learning, what is it? Well, it's, as you've seen with the different activities that you do, it's something that engages all of you. The conversation moves from me to you, and you're interacting with one another. And also with me, but in a way that engages your attention and enables me to understand that you understand and you follow the issues. Typically, and much of how I was taught, and in a lot of my initial career, it was very much me being the expert, you being the beneficiaries of my knowledge. And I was hoping that you would all take it on board. My practice has changed, and our job here today is to provide you with some tools that might encourage you to modify and change your practice. So this is an example of a teacher-centered or an instructor-centered approach. So typically, knowledge is flowing from the instructor into the student. So we expect them to be empty vessels and absorb this information and hold it because we've given it. What do you think happens to the information? You've seen some earlier slides that Jim showed. So if I'm teaching you things, what do you think the information might look like? So it flows into the student, retained. How much might be retained? Well, typically, it's probably like that. Some of them are on their mobiles, working out their social calendar. You know, others have switched off because they hate the sound of my voice. Some others are bored stiff because of the topic. And so the retention is really quite limited. What I want you to do now is what I want you to do at each of your tables is to begin with this drawing. It's really important. This is the teacher or instructor-centered topic. What I want you to do is to think as a group and come up with a diagram, a picture of what you think learner-centered activity should be. So we're looking for artists, we're looking for ideas, but we want a sketch. But it's important that you start from here. So this is your starting point. And we want to see what ideas you come up with that might change from a teacher-centered approach to a learner-centered one. You've got about 10 minutes to do that.